Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, April 27th, and this is Miss Shilia, and I'm here to talk to you about reading. And today, I want to teach you that readers are always thinking about what they're reading. And one of the things that they do is they stop and they self-assess and ask themselves, what do I need more work with? Do I need more work with fluency? Do I need more work with tracking the stories that I've read? Maybe I need more work with understanding literary language. And then what they do is they pick a goal. So what I want you to do today is I want you to think about those three specific areas: fluency, understanding literary language, and keeping track of longer books. And I want you to think about your own reading and what you think that you need more support with. And I want you to pick one of those areas and make that your goal for the next week. And we're going to work on that, and I'm going to show you how to make a plan for your goal and to then self-assess, which means you're going to think about how you're doing as a reader. And that's something that readers do all the time. Even as we get older, we read books and we stop and we think about, am I understanding what I'm reading? Do I know what's going on? Doesn't matter what age you are, it's something that's really important. And that as you get older and as you become stronger and stronger readers, you'll start to see that you just do this naturally. So I'm going to shrink myself, and I'm going to take you over to my slides. Un momento, por favor. Here we go. Self-assessing and setting goals. I'm going to move this up here. Okay. So today, again, is all about realizing what we need as a reader. What do we need more support with? And then we're going to set that as a goal, and I'm going to walk you through the planning stages of it. So the first goal that you might have for yourself is understanding literary language. And if you remember, that's where we are paying attention to special language being used in a book. This is where authors use words and phrases and things like that, alliteration, similes, metaphors, repetition, to make sure that their point is getting across, that they're hooking you, they're using special words for a specific reason. So we want to pay attention to that language. And when we notice that language, we want to reread the part, remember what's going on in the story, and then think about what's the special meaning that the author wants me to get. The other parts of understanding literary language are that when those two things are compared, you want to think about how they're alike. If you remember back to when we first started talking about literary language, in the story where she gets really, really angry, I think it's Sophia gets really, really angry, and they compare her to a volcano. The author compares her to a volcano, and I talked about how, we could have compared her to a firework, but a firework doesn't have that same effect as a volcano. So the author really thought about how she wanted to compare her character, or what she wanted to compare her character with, to make a point, right? To show you just how angry that character was. And then the other thing that we want to do when we set understanding literary language as a goal of ours is to figure out what that playful language really means. We know she's not really a volcano, but we have to stop and think about saying, hey, I really understand why they compared her to a volcano, because she's so angry and she's about to explode, right? Like a volcano would explode. The next goal that you might choose for yourself is making your reading more fluent. And I know we all went over this at school, so this is something that you should be familiar with. We've practiced this, and I know that we've all done this in all of our classes. So fluency is about how smoothly we read a book. And the smoother we can read a book, the better we are at comprehending it and really understanding what we're reading. And the first thing that we want to do is we read aloud and we read in our head. And I know in my class we talked about what the characters might sound like. That's like the coolest thing, is that you can create voices for these characters, right? We've also talked about scooping words into longer phrases. You don't want to read like a robot, because then you won't understand what is being read. It's really important that we're scooping words together to create phrases. I just touched on this, talking like the characters. If you had me in kindergarten, or if you have me now, you know that Miss Shelia loves to make up voices for all of her characters, especially Junie B. Jones, right? Those of you who know Miss Shelia, I love Junie B. And I have a special Junie B voice. And for me, it's so much fun to talk like the characters because it helps them come alive. And then I also remember them better. If each character has a special voice when you're reading in your head or even reading out loud, you tend to remember those characters more and their specific traits, right? Especially as we're reading these longer books that have lots of characters, this is all so important. The other thing is to make your voice match the mood. Now, I'm not sure where you left off in your classes, but I know in my class we read Mercy Watson to the Rescue, and we talked about how we want to make sure our voice that we're either using in our head or reading out loud with matches what the characters are saying and the mood that the characters are feeling. And I showed an example of that as I was reading Mercy Watson to the class, that Mr. Watson said a line, and I said it very confidently and loud and whatnot. And then right after I read it that way, it said that he didn't say that line very confidently, that his voice was a little quiet and not so sure of himself. So I went back and I reread it the way that the character should have said it. So if you're choosing to read more fluently as your goal, that's something that's really important to pay attention to. If you read something out loud or in your head a certain way, and then you find out the character didn't mean to say it that way, right? Maybe you read it loudly and it was supposed to be a whisper. It's really important you go back and you reread and you make your voice match the mood of that character. And then the last part of making your reading more fluent is to read at just a right pace. Now, I know I'm talking very quickly for this because I only have 15 minutes to talk to you and get this all recorded. So I know that my pace right now is way too fast. When I'm reading, I don't read this quickly. I want to make sure that what I'm reading is sinking in, that I'm understanding what all of the characters are saying and what's happening to all of them. So you have to find that just right pace for you. You don't want to read like a robot, but you also don't want to read like a crazy speed person like I'm talking right now. And then the last goal that you might choose is keeping track of longer books. And we talked a lot about this last week. And believe it or not, one of the best, most important tools that you have for keeping track of longer books is asking somebody for help. Whether it's someone in your class or another class or a parent or an older sibling, having someone that you can go to and ask a question. And hey, you could still even ask your teachers. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We can't leave the house. So ask somebody for help. The other thing is to determine what is important. And remember, we don't want to focus on all those itty-bitty little details. What are the big, most important events in the story or in the chapter? The third thing, when you get off track, it's important that you stop, reread until you remember where you left off, right? Or what you don't understand. And then answer those questions. If you remember last week, I showed you, I had a list of questions that help you understand, like, what's the problem? What's the solution? What's the big event? Things like that. How is the character changing? Are they changing? Those are questions you can ask yourself to make sure that you're understanding and you're able to keep track of these longer books, right? And then the last thing is to take notes. Get those handy-dandy Post-its out and a pencil, and while you're reading, you want to jot notes. Now remember, we don't want to fill our book full of Post-its, right? We don't have time for that, and that's getting into those itty-bitty details that aren't super important. But what I would do is I would, at the end of each chapter, or maybe when something big, really big happens and you want to remember it, stop and jot a little note about that. Okay? Now, the next thing I want to show you is a planning sheet. And you're going to use this today to set a goal for yourself. And then you're going to use it also to help you make a plan to practice that goal. So as you see on this sheet, we've got a goal, tools, steps, and then self-assessment. And that is just a simple yes or no. Did I reach my goal? Did I follow the steps in my plan to reach my goal? Yes or no? Super easy, right? And then here I filled one out. Let me see if I can move my camera down so you can see it better. There we go. So this is my goal planning sheet that I decided that I need to work on for the week. So in the goal, I filled out that I want my goal to be keeping track of longer books. And then I wrote down the tools that I need. I need Post-it notes. I need a pencil. I need the list of questions from last week, right? Jot down some questions to help guide you. And then I need a partner. So I'm going to reach out to my friends. Maybe I'm going to reach out to Mrs. Giordano, Mr. Bocchino, Mrs. Rain, Mrs. Contreras. Maybe I'll reach out to some kids in my class. Maybe they're reading the same book as I am. And then the steps that I'm going to do, or the first thing is I'm going to make a plan for reading, right? And my plan is I want to stop at the end of each chapter. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down those important events, not the itty-bitty ones, but the really big important ones on a Post-it. And then the third thing that I'm going to do to meet my goal is I'm going to make sure I talk about what I read to a partner. If you remember that, that was a big important step with keeping track of longer books. The more you talk about what you're reading to someone, whether they're reading the book or not, the more it's going to help you understand and remember what's going on. And then I'm going to assess myself at the end of the week. Was I able to keep track of this? Was I able to follow my plan and reach my goal? If not, maybe you want to set that same goal for the following. Keep thinking about it and maybe change your plan a little bit. Change the steps that you're going to take if you didn't reach your goal. If you did reach your goal, awesome. Pick a new goal and go on with that. All right, boys and girls, have an amazing day. And I look forward to seeing what you pick as your reading goals. And I know that you all will be able to reach your goals because you are such spectacular students. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful day.